Hi everyone, John from LookSmart Home Inspections right here in New Jersey, and this is video number 4 of the definitive guide to New Jersey home inspections. I hope you find the previous videos helpful. This may be the last one. We'll see how far we get with the content that I want to cover. So the next thing I want to talk to you guys about is septic inspections. So if you're buying a house with a septic system, which is a private wastewater disposal system, do you want to get that inspected? And the answer is absolutely you do. Unless you know that system is brand new and you have all the engineering plans and all the permits for the installation of that system, you want to make sure that you get an older septic system inspected. So anything that's not brand new, and even a brand new septic, you may want to do your due diligence and have it inspected. Septic systems are very expensive, and these typically are found in more rural areas of our state, New Jersey. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there's no septic in more of the suburban or urban areas. It's rare, but they do exist once in a while. So a septic system has to be properly inspected, and what you want is an open pit septic inspection with a camera. And what you want the septic inspector to do is to inspect all the components of the system. So the septic tank, the baffles, the distribution boxes, the laterals, and the septic field. All of that should be inspected to determine if it is in operational condition. And if a septic system fails a septic inspection, and a lot of them do, especially with age, that information that the septic system has failed generally goes to the Municipal Board of Health. And typically a house can't really change hands with a failed septic system. So it is likely that the seller of the house is going to have to go ahead and make any alterations or replacements to that septic before that home, you can actually, as a buyer, close on that home. So getting a septic inspection, is super important. So they should take a look at everything with that. You also want to, if it's an abandoned or a vacant home, you probably want to do something called a load test on the septic, where there's many gallons of water are run through the septic to see how it reacts. And that's generally a 2-day test. So a load test, and then you have your standard septic inspection if the home is occupied. So if the septic system is actually in use, getting use every day, standard septic inspection. If the home is vacant for a while, month or 2 months, you want to probably have something called a load test on the septic. So both of those very, very important. So don't forget those two very important pieces of due diligence when you're thinking about buying a home. So why are permits important? As home inspectors, we harp on permits a lot, right? We always want to make sure that the home has the required permits for the modifications, alterations, additions that have taken place in that house. So when you do something to your home and you create an addition, or you add plumbing or electrical or modifications to the house, say you had to change out your boiler or your water heater or your electrical panel, or you added a bathroom or put an addition on a home, generally what happens is that you have to go down, or the contractor who is doing the work has to go to the building department and take out a building permit and that's called opening a permit. And yes, there's a fee for that. So the purpose of the permit is to actually have the municipal building inspectors come in to take a look at that work and to make sure that work meets all local requirements, meets all code requirements, it's safe, and it doesn't affect the habitability of the home. It's just another layer of protection for you, the buyer, is to make sure that the seller has taken out the proper permits. The thing about this is that just because a permit is there, you always have to make sure that the permit has been closed. So you have an open permit, the building inspector comes and takes a look at what he or she needs to look at. Say that they've upgraded the electrical panel box from 100 amps to 200 amps. they'll have an electrical permit for that. And so after that work is performed, the municipal electrical inspector will come back to the home and inspect that work and make sure that it meets code, that it's safe, that the work has been done correctly. And they'll put a permit sticker, a closed and sign off on the permit sticker on the electrical panel box. And this really happens with all of the permits that a person has in a home. And it's very important for you as a buyer to make sure that these permits, number one, were opened, and number two, were closed. So if a permit, what happens if you don't get a permit? Say somebody, take for example, somebody finishes a basement and there's no permits, and they've added, say, a wet bar in the basement, or a bathroom in the basement, or they've added hi-hat lights to the ceiling, something like that. There should be an open and enclosed permit for that work. And if we go in as a home inspector and we flag some things, right, in the unfinished basement, one of the things that I'm going to tell you as my client is that you should make sure that the permits have been opened and properly closed, because it gives you that measure of protection. Because I can't see behind the walls, so I can't see how the electrical contractor, or for the homeowner, or the homeowner for that matter, ran those electrical wires through the walls. So the idea is to have the municipal inspector evaluate that before the ceiling and the wall finishes have been put up, and then the home is sold and the home inspector goes in and we can't see anything other than the interior finishes. We see, hi-hat lights, we see more electrical receptacles, we see a new bathroom, but everything is closed, so we can't really view the important things that we need to do behind the walls. So having a closed permit definitely helps you in this respect. So if there are no permits, you as a new buyer, when you go buy that house, you're going to take on that responsibility. So say in 3 to 5 years, or whenever you choose to, you go sell the house, you're going to have to go ahead through this home inspection process. And your buyer is going to want to get those permits. So just because you're okay and you don't want to get the permits, and you're not having the seller get those permits, does not mean that down the road you're not going to have to pay the piper. So in other words, you're probably, at some point, you're going to have to pay the price as the owner of this house for no permits. And that's crucially important. So make sure that you guys pull all of these permits, go to the town. You can access all of this. It's all public record. And if you find new additions and bathrooms and electrical and plumbing modifications and additions to structural, all of that stuff should be properly permitted. And if it's not, a red flag should come up in your mind and say, geez, this is an issue. We're going to pay for this later. And you really want to make sure that the seller buttons up those permits, opens and closes the permits, so you, the buyer of this house now, has at least that measure of protection. So don't forget about asking for the permits in the home that you're thinking about buying. It's crucially important. Okay, how do you get the permits? There's something called an OPRA, or an Open Public Records Act, that allows you to access public records. And this is especially important in real estate transaction, because you can go ahead and submit an OPRA request to the municipality that you're thinking about buying a house in, and they have a number of days, most likely 7, to get you that information that you requested. Now, most municipalities on their websites are going to have a form, an online form that you can fill out to expedite this process. Or you can create your own OPRA letter and send that to the municipal clerk, basically. And that they'll get you the open and closed permits on the home. But you can also ask for things like, fire department response records. You can ask for tax assessment records. You can ask for any kind of other issues in the home. It's very important to do this. And the thing that you really want to get is the open and the closed permits. Now, here's the thing that's very important, is that just because there are no closed permits on that OPRA, it doesn't mean that a permit has been opened in the first place. So I have real estate agents tell me this all the time, or tell my client this all the time. We did an OPRA and everything has been closed. There's no open permits. Well, that's great. But have all the permits been opened in the first place? Has there been permits for that basement or addition or bathroom or electrical or any additions in the house, boilers, water heaters? Have permits actually been taken out? So you as a buyer really need to do some checking. We really need to look at this house and go through that OPRA report and say, you know what, this boiler, was just, installed 2 years ago, and there's nothing here about the installation. Or the water heater, for that matter, there's nothing here about the installation, or the electrical panel box upgrade, or this new wiring that's in this addition. There's no permits for this, and there's no permits for the addition or the basement or whatever, what have you. It's really up to you guys to look into this problem. Now, as a home inspector, I'm going to tell you to do that, right? I'm going to tell you, hey, make sure that we have the permits for this, we have the permits for this, we have the permits for this. It's very important then you go ahead and actually do that work, and to find out and ask the seller, have these permits ever been opened? And if they haven't been opened, why not? Because the last thing you want to do is look at that OPRA and just kind of, everything's great and there's no problems. You purchase the home, you close on the home, and then you have a finished basement that's never, the tax assessor has no idea that there's a finished basement in the house. Now, guess what? What's going to happen, right? You're going to be, the next time they assess taxes, you're going to be hit with a big tax assessment, and you weren't ready for that probably. So it's very important to do your due diligence regarding permits. And one method or mechanism to do that is to use an OPRA request. So talk to your attorney about that. They're very familiar with that. It's an easy thing to write. It's not rocket science. Anybody can write an OPRA request and list out the various aspects of the home that you want to have, documentation for. And do that. And you should do that right when you put your offer on the home. It's public record, just so you can get the ball rolling. And it would be great if you would have that information before your home inspection. So then you can actually give that information to the home inspector, and then he or she can help you sort of decipher these things. And then in his mind or her mind, as they're going through the house, maybe they'll look at some things and say, hey, you know what? This should probably have a permit, or that should probably have a permit. Now, I understand that some things are challenging to get permits for. So if you're in the middle of the winter, you have no hot water, you call a plumber in to change your hot water, or you change your water heater, I mean, chances are you're not going to have a permit for that. But subsequently, you can open and close a permit for that. The same is true with a boiler. So those are really the two things, or say a furnace. Those are really the three items where, I would say, it makes sense that they don't have a permit, but really subsequently after the fact, they should have opened the permit, had the building inspector in to inspect, and then close the permit. So even though those cases are sort of quick and you have to act quickly to get these things resolved, especially in the winter, you should still then, as an owner of a house, follow up and get those permits squared away, because eventually you're going to sell the home. So don't neglect your permits, and don't neglect sending an OPRA request in to the municipality. So you guys did your OPRA request, and you're asking me, hey, John, is there anything else, any other reports that are out there that I can get to help me understand the past history of the house that I'm purchasing? And I'm going to tell you there is, although there's a little bit of a challenge with it. So there's something called a CLUE report, which is a comprehensive loss underwriting exchange report. And this report is held by a company, it's a consumer database company called LexisNexis. That's who stores the database of these loss reports that are used by the various insurance companies. But there is a way to access a loss report or a CLUE report on the home that you're thinking about purchasing. And that is if you ask the seller to acquire one for you. So you as the buyer can't access this report, but the seller or owner of the home can get this report. And that would be useful for you to get that report so you can learn about any past insurance claims that they've had on the home. So was there a flood? Was there a fire? What is the theft activity? You know, did something happen in the home that the seller had to have an insurance claim for? Was there anybody injured on the property, which is important also? So something called a clue report. Don't neglect it. I tell you what, if you ask for a clue report, number one, people probably won't even know what the heck you're talking about. And you probably be in the top, 5% of home buyers, because it is highly, highly unlikely that most people are going to know about the clue report and actually ask for it. But it can be a useful, again, piece of due diligence along with your OPRA request. So think about it and see if your seller would be willing to get you the loss underwriting report on the home. So at least you have that peace of mind. And just think of it that way. If the seller is not willing to do that, isn't that a red flag in itself? But the seller is like, yeah, sure, no problem. I'll get you the loss report. It's no problem. I'll get it for you. That's peace of mind, right? Because the seller is saying, yeah, no problem. I don't have any issue with you looking at the loss or insurance claims that were on this home of mine. So don't neglect your clue report. It's an important piece of due diligence also, along with the OPRA request. Let's talk about flipped houses. What's a flip? Now, we've all heard that, we've heard that term. We've watched HGTV. Flip this house. What is a flip house? A flip house is simply a house that a person, organization has purchased in order to renovate, rehab, and then sell at a profit. And profit is the main word here. So it's important to really, really get a thorough home inspection on a flip house. Because in my experience, not every flip house, but there's a good number of flip houses are going to have some defects. And they're going to have some defects that were probably covered up. And they're covered up on purpose. Why are they covered up on purpose? Because the profit motive is there, right? This isn't a family that lived in this house for 15 or 20 years who took pride in maintaining the home. This is a person or other entity that's purchased this home to renovate it and sell for maximum profit. So if you're trying to do something for maximum profit, you're likely to try to cut your costs, right? It's like any other business, right? Where you try to cut your costs so you can maximize your profit. And sometimes cutting costs really means, possibly covering up some stuff and, possibly not doing the work in a way that you would really want it to be done as a buyer of a house. Things may look pretty. Things may look okay, but there could be things under the surface that you don't know about. So it's crucially important to get an experienced home inspector to fully inspect that renovated or flipped house. Now, I'm not saying don't buy a house that's a flip, because I've inspected many homes that have been renovated for sale that they've done an excellent job, and people took their pride and they used excellent craftsmanship and they actually did a really good job. And then you have the other extreme where you have terrible work and you would never want to buy that home. So as a layperson, as a new home buyer, as somebody who doesn't do this and is not proficient in house defect recognition, it's really important that you get that flip house properly inspected, because things can be lurking in there that you don't know about. So you can buy a flip house for sure, but just make sure that you do your due diligence to the nth degree, so you don't find big problems later on when you're living in that home. It's crucially important on a flip house. So I was going through the home inspector in New Jersey regulations, and it just occurred to me that I can't really recall any specific defect other than one that the regulations specifically state that we as New Jersey home inspectors have to, you know, make sure that we alert our client to. And of course, material defects, we went through that on another video, so I won't go through that again. But those are sort of like the bigger issues that affect this, you know, the habitability, the value and safety of the home. There is one defect, however, that we still find, and the New Jersey Home Inspection Advisory Committee has said, hey, home inspectors out there, you need to alert your client of this problem. And that problem is single-strand conductor aluminum wiring. And this is a problem because it is a fire hazard. So what happens is when you have single-strand conductor aluminum wiring, and typically this wiring was, you know, in the late 1960s to the early 1970s, and it was a wonderful thing at the time, and people loved it, and it was a great conductor of electricity. But they found out that once you run electrical current through single-strand conductor wire, the wire expands, and the current goes off, it contracts. So it's with this expansion and contraction at the different junction points in the home that can cause those wires to get loose and ultimately cause electrical arcing, whether that be in a electrical outlet, in a light fixture, in a wall, in a splice box, you know, whatever the case is. So this is really important stuff. And insurance companies, they don't want to really insure homes with this type of wiring. So it's equally important that you're, if you're purchasing a home in the late 60s to the early 1970s, and even, you know, to the mid 70s, you got to keep your antenna up. I still see it. You want to make sure that your home inspector knows how to identify this wiring in your home, so later on you don't have a huge electrical rewiring bill for the house, and also your insurance company. So insurance companies don't really like to insure homes with this type of wiring unless there's some kind of fix. There's not a whole lot of fixes for this type of wiring. The best fix is to rewire the house, remove it, abandon it, rewire the house, but you're talking a lot of money, $30,000 plus, maybe more. It's destructive, it's challenging, difficult to do. Another somewhat of a fix is to wire copper, do a copper pigtail to the aluminum single-strand conductor with a purple wire nut. This is approved by some insurance companies. The thing about doing pigtailing to aluminum wiring is that each and every junction point has to be, properly pigtailed. And that's really difficult to do. You need to hire an electrical contractor who's really proficient at understanding, how to keep track of all of the work that he's done and all of the work that he or she, needs to do, and what junction points were done and what junction points need to be done. And there's hundreds probably of junction points in a home that need to be done. And that's a challenge. And it's rather expensive also. The other way is through a cold weld called a copalum connector. And that's basically cold welding, doing the same or similar thing with a pigtail copper to single strand aluminum. You cold weld that using a special crimp connector. And that's also a good way to solve this problem. But I've never really run into anybody who actually did that, electrical contractor who actually did that. I looked myself for that, but I couldn't find anybody to do that. So really, in most cases, you're really down to the two choices: rewire the whole house, or do your copper to aluminum pigtailing, which is sort of a lesser of the fix, obviously. So keep on a lookout for aluminum wiring. It's something that's very important. In fact, it's so important that the state of New Jersey said, you know what, home inspectors, you have to tell your clients about this. Let's talk about level 2 chimney inspections. What is a level 2 chimney inspection? It's basically a detailed, focused inspection using a camera of your chimney or chimneys that you have in the home. So typically a chimney is going to vent your heating equipment, boiler, furnace, water heater, and then you might have a separate chimney or a chimney that has two flues that's going to vent the fireplace. So you could have multiple flues. And when I'm talking about a flue, I'm talking about one pipe that appliances vent into, one pipe. So you could have several of these, what we call flues. You could have 2 or 3 flues coming out of one chimney, or 2 flues in one chimney and 1 flue in another chimney. It really depends on the configuration of the house. What can go wrong? Well, a lot of things can go wrong, especially if that flue is terracotta. And this is found in most of the chimneys that we look at, especially in older homes, they're terracotta. So the terracotta is pieced together, and this is a clay liner, right? It's pieced together. There's mortar joints, pieces of terracotta go up and build up to your chimney till it protrudes the chimney crown at the top. And this can this can deteriorate. So the mortar joints inside the terracotta generally deteriorate, causing gaps to form in between those clay liner pieces. So we don't want gaps, because the products of combustion, that exhaust gas from whatever you're burning, either the furnace, water heater, boiler, your fireplace, can migrate to places where it's not supposed to be. And when exhaust gas migrates to places where it's not supposed to be, that can create and is a significant safety hazard, right? Carbon monoxide, you've all heard of carbon monoxide, can actually kill a person. You can go to sleep and never wake up. And that's a serious issue. So you really want to make sure that your interior of your flues and interior of your chimneys, and also the top of the chimney, and that whole chimney system is working well and is safe, so you don't have these safety problems. Now, as a home inspector, we're going to look at these components of the chimney, and we're going to do a visual inspection of the chimney. Now, I'm not going to say we're going to do a level 1 chimney inspection, but that's more of the kind of inspection that a home inspector does. It's sort of more on the line of a level 1 inspection, although we don't call it a level 1 inspection. It's the visible components of the chimney. And look, we do a good job at it. We're going to find defects in your chimney. But what we can't do is a level 2 chimney inspection, where a camera is either driven up through the chimney flue or driven down through the chimney flue, and the interior of that chimney is properly inspected. And that's the issue that we have, is that as a home inspector, I have a limited time at the house. And I'm not trained, I'm not licensed to do a level 2 chimney inspection. So if you want to take your due diligence a step further, you may want to have a level 2 chimney inspection performed. I know what you're thinking. Geez, I'm spending a lot of money on inspections. You're telling me I need a level 2. If I have a septic, I have to do a septic. I probably need an oil tank sweep. You know, you're going to do a whole home inspection, and then, I might need a level 2 chimney inspection. I mean, these things are optional, first off. Like, you can do none or all of these. If you want to do, it depends on the layers of due diligence that you want to do. And I know it gets expensive. It does. But just think about how much money you're spending on this house in New Jersey, right? The starter home in New Jersey, if there is one, I don't really even think there are anymore. That's maybe $500,000 as a piece of a starter home. Just a regular, standard 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath house, attached garage, $500,000. Now, if you're spending $8, $9, $1 million on a home, I mean, isn't it worthwhile to know exactly what that is? I mean, if you spend a couple $1,000s on inspections, versus $950,000 for a home or more, it doesn't really seem that much, right? I mean, that $2,000 versus all of, the whole home price. So once you look at it that way, it's not really all that much. And doing your due diligence may give you the opportunity to negotiate with the seller or walk away from a bad deal. Like, if there's very wrong issues, you could possibly walk away, from the real estate transaction. So don't neglect your chimney inspection also. It's an option, but one option that you really should highly consider when you're buying a home. So should you, as a buyer of a house, have a sewer line inspection performed in the home that you're thinking about buying? And the answer is unequivocally Yes, you want to make sure that that sewer line, which you're going to own in about a month, is free from obstruction, displacement, damage, tree roots, water retention. So many things can go wrong with a sewer line, especially an older sewer line. So if you have a 60, 70, 80-year-old sewer line, chances are that sewer line is going to have some problems. Maybe not huge problems, maybe it has some huge problems. But you want to know, because that line that goes from your house to the city tap connection, that's a really expensive line to repair or replace. You're probably looking at, to replace that line, $6,000 on the low end, $8,000, $10,000. It really depends on the length of that line. So if you're buying a house that's way, way far back from the street and you know there's a sewer line, you should have that sewer line inspected. And even if you don't, if you're buying an older home, you should have that sewer line inspected. And I tell you what, we even find problems in homes that are newer because the sewer line has been installed incorrectly and it's been backfilled incorrectly, and now there's a low area in the sewer line. So I've seen those too. So don't think just because your home is brand spanking new that there are no problems with that sewer line. Look, it's an inexpensive way to alleviate a lot of pain and heartache later on, because the last thing you want to do is move into a house and then a couple weeks later you have a sewer line backup, you have a real messy problem in the home, and it's a very expensive problem to fix or to cure. So yes, you should have a sewer line inspection with your home inspection. Not everybody does that, but boy, I would highly recommend it. And certainly if I was in the market for a house now, I would for sure have my sewer line inspected. Super important. Let's talk about level 2 chimney inspections. What is a level 2 chimney inspection? It's basically a detailed, focused inspection using a camera of your chimney or chimneys that you have in the home. So typically a chimney is going to vent your heating equipment, boiler, furnace, water heater, and then you might have a separate chimney or a chimney that has two flues that's going to vent the fireplace. So you could have multiple flues. And when I'm talking about a flue, I'm talking about one pipe that appliances vent into, one pipe. So you could have several of these, what we call flues. You could have 2 or 3 flues coming out of one chimney, or 2 flues in one chimney and 1 flue in another chimney. It really depends on the configuration of the house. What can go wrong? Well, a lot of things can go wrong, especially if that flue is terracotta. And this is found in most of the chimneys that we look at, especially in older homes, they're terracotta. So the terracotta is pieced together, and this is a clay liner, right? It's pieced together. There's mortar joints, pieces of terracotta go up and build up to your chimney till it protrudes the chimney crown at the top. And this can this can deteriorate. So the mortar joints inside the terracotta generally deteriorate, causing gaps to form in between those clay liner pieces. So we don't want gaps, because the products of combustion, that exhaust gas from whatever you're burning, either the furnace, water heater, boiler, your fireplace, can migrate to places where it's not supposed to be. And when exhaust gas migrates to places where it's not supposed to be, that can create and is a significant safety hazard, right? Carbon monoxide, you've all heard of carbon monoxide, can actually kill a person. You can go to sleep and never wake up. And that's a serious issue. So you really want to make sure that your interior of your flues and interior of your chimneys and also the top of the chimney and that whole chimney system is working well and is safe, so you don't have these safety problems. Now, as a home inspector, we're going to look at these components of the chimney, and we're going to do a visual inspection of the chimney. Now, I'm not going to say we're going to do a level 1 chimney inspection, but that's more of the kind of inspection that a home inspector does. It's sort of more on the line of a level 1 inspection, although we don't call it a level 1 inspection. It's the visible components of the chimney. And look, we do a good job at it. We're going to find defects in your chimney. But what we can't do is a level 2 chimney inspection where a camera is either driven up through the chimney flue or driven down through the chimney flue, and the interior of that chimney is properly inspected. And that's the issue that we have, is that as a home inspector, I have a limited time at the house. And I'm not trained, I'm not licensed to do a level 2 chimney inspection. So if you want to take your due diligence a step further, you may want to have a level 2 chimney inspection performed. I know what you're thinking. Geez, I'm spending a lot of money on inspections. You're telling me I need a level 2. If I have a septic, I have to do a septic. I probably need an oil tank sweep. You know, you're going to do a whole home inspection, and then, you know, I might need a level 2 chimney inspection. I mean, these things are optional, first off. Like you can do none or all of these. If you want to do, it depends on the layers of due diligence that you want to do. And I know it gets expensive. It does. But just think about how much money you're spending on this house in New Jersey, right? The starter home in New Jersey, if there is one, I don't really even think there are anymore. That's maybe $500,000 as a piece of a starter home. Just a regular, standard 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath house, attached garage, $500,000. Now, if you're spending $8, $9, $1 million on a home, I mean, isn't it worthwhile to know exactly what that is? I mean, if you spend a couple $1,000s on inspections, you know, versus $950,000 for a home or more, it doesn't really seem that much, right? I mean, that $2,000 versus all of, you know, the whole home price. So once you look at it that way, it's not really all that much. And doing your due diligence may give you the opportunity to negotiate with the seller or walk away from a bad deal. Like if there's very wrong issues, you could possibly walk away, you know, from the real estate transaction. So don't neglect your chimney inspection also. It's an option, but one option that you really should highly consider when you're buying a home. Let's talk about the two major home inspector associations. One is ASHI, the American Society of Home Inspectors, and the other is INTERNASHI, the International Association of Certified Home Inspectors. So those two are the largest home inspector organizations that we as home inspectors can belong to. Why is that important? You want to hire a home inspector who is a member of at least one of these associations, and preferably both of these associations. Why? Because the state of New Jersey has their own educational requirements for licensing of home inspectors. But the associations also have their own educational requirements. So when you hire a home inspector who's a member of one or both of these associations, you know that he or she, that home inspector, has made a commitment to continuing their education, because they have to do all the state requirements, and then they have to do the requirements of either one or two of these associations. So you know that they have sort of this, they're on a path of continuous learning. And the home inspection field is a continuous learning field. You're always learning about something. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy about it, is that I can never know enough. There's always something to learn. And so look for home inspectors that are members of one or two of these large associations. And at least you can know that they are, you know, they've made a commitment, you know, to furthering their education and moving forward in their profession. Should you have a radon test with your home inspection? And the answer is 100% yes, you should have a radon test. What is radon? Just a short synopsis. Radon is a colorless, odorless gas that's a carcinogenic gas. That's the second leading cause of lung cancer in New Jersey, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the country as well. So it's during real estate transactions, we generally test for radon gas. And one of the licenses that most home inspectors are going to have is a radon technician license. And that gives us the ability to test for radon gas in a home that we're inspecting. And it's important for you to do that. The last thing you want to do is live in a home that has a high level of concentration of radon and not know about that for like 8 to 10 years. that can be problematic. I mean, not to say that you're going to have a health issue or a lung cancer issue, but it certainly puts you at higher risk. So spending a couple $100 on a radon test is money well spent for sure, right? And generally, radon is something that if it comes back high, and we're looking for a level that's over what we call 4 picocuries of liter of air. So that's the threshold that's been established by the DEP and the EPA. So anything that's over 4, 4.1, 4.2, that's in the action level. Anything under, 3.6, 2.2, whatever that is, under. Now, there's no safe levels of radon. But what we have here is just an established threshold saying that if you have radon over 4 picocuries per liter of air, hey, that's something you want to deal with. That's a level where we're not all that comfortable with, and you should get that fixed. Now, getting a radon system installed in a home is really not that problematic, and it's really not overly expensive. So if I had to guess right now, a radon system is going to probably be in the $3,500 range, maybe a little more, depending on the size home. It's not crazy expensive, but at least, and they're very effective. So you can really lower down the effective concentration of the radon gas found in your home significantly with something called a depressurization system, or say a radon mitigation system. It's a simple fan system is basically what it is. And it's really not all that problematic to install and very effective. But even if you have lower levels of radon, say 2 or 3 picocuries per liter of air, you can still fix it. You can still lower them even more. It really depends on what you want to do in terms of what's important for you and your family. I mean, some people, I tell them they have a 3.9 and they're like, great, that's it. I'm done. I had no issue with that. Other people, it's like 2.2 and they're saying, geez, what can I do, to lower my levels of radon gas? And you can always install a system. They're not all that expensive. So you want to test for radon gas on this real estate transaction, because if it does come back high, there is a possibility that the owner or seller of the home may have to fix that. It really depends on how your real estate contract is written. So talk to your attorney about it. But don't forget your radon gas test. Should I have my home inspector do a wood-destroying insect inspection? Yes. The answer is yes, if they're licensed to do so and if they can do so. So in New Jersey, you don't really need a license to do the wood-destroying insect inspection. What you do is you need a license, and I think I said this in another video, is to use the NJPMA 33 form. So that's where you need that application license with the 7B attachment. It's rather confusing. Leave it to New Jersey to make this a little convoluted, but that's just how it is. So should you do a wood-destroying insect inspection? And yes, you should. And some banks are going to require that NJPMA 33 form for your mortgage. Your mortgage company wants to know that your house that you're buying is termite-free, is carpenter ant-free. There's no issues there. If the home inspector or wood-destroying insect inspector finds a problem, they're going to put on that form that, hey, there's a problem, and there's an active issue that needs to be addressed. So that form is going to remain open until that problem is treated and solved, and a form that indicates that there's no active infestation currently is provided for you. Then you can go ahead and give that to your mortgage company. What typically happens is the home inspector is going to provide that initial form. And if they don't find anything, if there's no wood-destroying insect activity in the home, they're going to write you a clean form and send that to you. If there is, that form is going to say there's active issue in the house, either termites, carpenter ants, carpenter bees, powder post beetle, whatever it is. And then it's going to be up to the seller to rectify that. So until you get a clean form, it's unlikely that the bank is going to issue the mortgage. So this is an important aspect, not only for yourself to know if there's any kind of wood-destroying insects in home, it's also important, for your bank, because they're likely not to provide the mortgage unless they have a clean WDI form from you. So that's just another thing that you have to do. Most home inspectors can provide the WDI aspect of the inspection. When you're interviewing home inspectors, ask about it. And I think most of them will be able to provide that for you using the proper form that the banks want. That's really all I have right now, guys. We've covered a lot of ground in the last 4 videos, and hopefully you found it helpful. At least a couple of you found it helpful regarding if you're in the marketplace for a home inspector, or just thinking about purchasing a home. So we've covered a lot of ground with a lot of different topics that I think are important. So I went through the topics that I think are the most important for you as someone in the marketplace for a home, should understand, at least give you the overview of these important topics. So then maybe you can do your own, research and further your sort of knowledge on these things. So if you have any questions about anything, I'm John from LookSmart Home Inspections. I can be found at looksmarthomeinspections.com. You can certainly look me up. My phone number is obviously there. You can email me. And certainly if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them or give you some guidance. But I'm just really looking to help people. Been around for a long time in this profession. I love it. I still really enjoy what I do. I find it rewarding helping people, try to navigate this process and inspect homes that, this is a large purchase for people. This is probably the most money they're going to spend at one time in any given purchase, and I don't take that. I take that very seriously regarding, my process and what I want to do for, clients. So thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you next video.